But the question reads as follows. Military drone strikes have increased dramatically overseas, but civilian casualties, referred to as collateral damage, have skyrocketed as well. Statistics show that for every one targeted terrorist killed by a drone strike, 49 innocent people are also killed. Do you believe that this is an effective technique and worth the human cost? Based on your political philosophy, do you support the use of military drone strikes? And let's start this one with Austin. 2 minutes.
I believe that if we're going to have a military and they're going to be performing operations that are to defend the United States, the War Powers Act of 1974 allows the president to use temporary powers to protect citizenry of the United States and anything that would involve our national security. So there is a very limited use of powers that the president has to exercise. When you're in a war, when the United States has declared war, it's a very different legal situation that you're put in rather than a sort of undeclared war situation as we have now in Afghanistan and Iraq. I believe that if we were to have a declared war status, then you go in, you declare a war, you win it, and you do whatever it takes to win. So I think that a drone strike that would take the risk of American soldiers off of the battlefield is perfectly legitimate. However, it is not legitimate as it is currently structured, where the president uses it without due process and without oversight by the Congress. The Congress does sign off in a sort of flippant way to the presidential powers to use these drones, basically saying, oh, we will not stop you from using these drones. So I think that that's wrong, but I don't think that the drone itself is necessarily malevolent or malicious. It's just a tool that we can use. It's like a gun or anything else. But as it's currently being used now, I do not support the use of drones overseas as presidential power. And I also absolutely do not support the use of drones on United States soil whatsoever under any circumstances without a warrant.
I would say that usage of drones needs to be a tool of discretion to the president. But I do echo a lot of what Austin has to say, that Congress has ceded a great deal of authority to the president when it comes to actually declaring war. This has a lot to do with, as I said, Wilson. It also has a lot to do with Kennedy. It also has a lot to do with Johnson, and also Roosevelt. This is the tradition that progressives have put forward, where we can have endless wars and not have a clear reason for being there, and it just gets changed throughout. I mean, part of the issue in Vietnam, for instance, was that Johnson didn't want to withdraw because it would make him look weak, but he wasn't trying to win the war to win it. He wasn't trying to actually just win the war. Now, drone strikes are just a strategy. It's just a tactic. It's just a thing that we can do in order to preserve American lives, and it serves its purpose. Every time that we do one of those, we don't have to send in a team to actually risk their lives. Are people of other nations, are their lives less worthwhile than ours? I don't think so, but it really just comes down to a matter of discretion for the president.
All right, I just want to respond quickly to JP throwing progressives under the bus when it comes to endless wars. Let's not forget who started the notion of preemptive strikes. That was a conservative president.
Wilson.
No.
Woodrow Wilson.
Okay. Preemptive strike. George Bush, 2003, when we invaded Iraq, when we had absolutely no proof of weapons of mass destruction. That set a terrible precedent. So I love how the blame gets shifted to progressives when it comes to one of our most failed wars. Another thing that I wanted to bring up is signature strikes, and I don't think people discuss signature strikes enough. Now, signature strikes are different from, drone strikes where the government knows exactly who they're targeting. In signature strikes, they don't know. They just base the strike based on certain characteristics of that individual, and although they're not sure that that's the individual that they're striking, the government will still kind of give a head nod and say, go ahead, let's do it anyway. That is a big problem, and it's not just a big problem because I find it to be immoral. It's a problem because if we are trying to spread so-called democracy in another country, if we're trying to end terror, we can't be terrorists ourselves. We can't go strike people that we aren't sure are the people that we are supposed to be targeting. And at the same time, I mean, look at Pakistan. We're doing drone strikes and killing civilians at weddings, at funerals, and I think that that sends a terrible message internationally. And, you know, I definitely agree with due process. I always pronounce this gentleman's name inappropriately, but it's Anwar al-Awlaki. Our drone strike, in that case, was hideous because of the fact that that was a U.S. citizen, there was no due process, and I disagreed with that.
And I'd like to say, too, I think it's wrong to say that a preemptive first strike is never out of the question. I mean, I'm a libertarian. I think Iraq was absolutely wrong. But if the Chinese were to sail a fleet of destroyers into the Gulf of Mexico, you say, okay, you know, if you cross this line any further, you know, we're going to shoot you. If, you know, somebody picks up their fist at you and throws a fist, you know, you have a right to block it and strike first.
Do you do a letter of marque for that?
Yeah. But, you know, think about it this way, you know, we have a right to look out for our own self-interest. You know, Israel is doing that. For example, there was a perfect example in 1981 when Israel attacked Iraq. This was the Osirak nuclear reactor. The Israelis thought that there was a chance that Iraq was going to build a nuclear weapon. I think they thought it was in their best interest to take that out, and it was in the United States' best interest to stay neutral and stay out of it, and we did. That's why I advocate for a foreign policy of neutrality, because I think that countries like Israel, they have their own best interests at heart, just like we do. So I think that you shouldn't be naive when it comes to foreign policy. You should use due process, but you do have to understand there are people that do want to harm us. There are people that do want to kill us. Iraq was based on a lie, and it was wrong to strike them based on false intelligence. But when you talk about national security strategy, you do have to have a real strategy when it comes to defending our country.
We have 2 more minutes for rebuttal questions.
Oh, really? Oh, okay. Yeah.
Go for it.
Actually, this is worth talking about. A lot of people were rolling their eyes when I was talking about how weapons of mass destruction were in fact found in Iraq. Look, they were dormant. Okay, we did find stuff. It was dormant. Iraq had gone out of its way to convince us that, and the world's community, that they did have weapons of mass destruction. They absolutely did this, and that is part of the thing that fooled us. It wasn't a conscious deception. You know, it was that there was a gray area. We weren't certain. We decided that in the wake of 9/11, that it was better to be safe than sorry. Now, George Will, conservative writer, following the invasion, wrote, and he was absolutely correct, that finding weapons of mass destruction was crucial to justifying the action we took and to remaining. And that is why we wound up on this big search, looking for weapons of mass destruction. But I'm not willing to say that it was just, you know, it was the worst thing ever that we could have done. It was that it unfolded into a big mistake. However, the reasons that we went in were completely valid, which was that we wanted to make sure that this was not a country that was arming itself so that it could attack us.
Absolutely not. Our Secretary of Defense, Donald Rumsfeld, stated that we know where they are. They're in the area around Tikrit, north, south, east, west, all directions, and they didn't show up anywhere. So it was totally based on lies. And do you know
that's not a lie. That's something that he didn't know.
Ladies and gentlemen, how did these chemical weapons come into the possession of Saddam Hussein? I want to make sure that we get the history right on this one, because what happened was we had declared Iraq a terrorist nation, so we embargoed all chemical weapons or any nuclear weapons or any sort of fissile material from entering Iraq. Now, what we did was we allowed the sunset of the provision for them to be a terrorist nation to occur for 3 months. Just enough time to get enough shipments across the border before we snapped it back closed and said, oh, no more chemical weapons. You got all you need. And then we gassed the Kurds.
Okay, I think we've finalized that one. Let's
I'm sending smoke signals, Tonto style.